What it do, chooms? Welcome to Space JB. I am your White Lotus Kung Fu knowing, 15 wolves owning, and winner of the Kumite.
Did you say Kumite?
The Kumite.
What's a Kumite?
Host Space, and if this is your first time being here, thank you for clicking this video. If you like the content, then consider hitting that like button and consider subscribing. If you've been to the crib before, welcome back and much love for the continued support. Ever since the launch of Cyberpunk 2077, our beautifully dense and uniquely immersive Night City has always teased at a bigger world beyond its poorly guarded borders. The horizon that seems so close, the NUSA making itself known in the Phantom Liberty expansion, along with this maglev advertisement, all points towards life outside of Del Coronado Bay. With Mike Pondsmith mentioning in an interview that we will be visiting a new city saying, quote, Chicago gone wrong, it seemed like a great time to drop some new content. And in this video, I will talk about the city of Chicago in the Cyberpunk lore and why this would be the perfect place to feature, or better yet, even set the new Cyberpunk 2 game in, which I'm just calling Cyberpunk 2080. So without further ado, let's cook up these engines and let's take off. The city of Chicago was established in 1833 by some fur trading choom of Haitian and French descent. During World War II, the city would have its hands in research and contributions to the Manhattan Project. A secret complex of buildings underneath the university called Heartland was host to this research. When the progress of the research exceeded expectations, the facility was closed down, but not destroyed. By 1960, before the Vietnam War, Heartland was being repurposed for a new bioagent and chemical research lab. During this time, the growing city would be witness to a surge in gang-related crimes and activity. While this was happening, Heartland would get shut down once again.
Shutting the studio down.
Due to its poor infrastructure and old-ass designs was the main reasons. By 1990, the crime waves over the last 3 decades were slowly fading as the city would start to fall into its first era of some sort of peace. Technology around the world was advancing at this time, with the rise in megacorps popping up, bringing some much-needed opportunities, and the Windy City was progressing from it. With the new growth came a booming economy. Huge towering skyscrapers reflecting the cityscape, businesses opening up looking for workers, and in Chicago, this wouldn't be difficult as the folks were eager to provide for their families. Fortune 500 companies were providing enough wealth to effectively create a divide in the status among the population. Folks had careers, pension, and had minimal savings, and some others had retirement plans that would set them up for life. The city was thriving. This era of peace and abundance would only last a few years as Chicago would get hit with one of the biggest gut punches I've ever seen. Okay, well, maybe not as hard as that, but pretty damn close, Choom. This gut punch was called the collapse. You know, wait, can we just admire that scene real quick? Kumite! During the collapse, which is the event that started in 1996, threw the US into all kinds of hell. After the world stock crash of '94 wasn't letting up, and for those families who had their pensions and life savings wrapped up in those megacorps that I mentioned earlier, they lost everything. Everything! For some of the new chooms that may not know much about the collapse, I'll try to make this part quick. For those who do know about this event, I'll leave a timestamp that you can skip to down below. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it. For those of you chooms who decided to stick around, the collapse was basically the Great Depression 2.0 to the 25th power. Between 1990 and 94, the European Economic Community, or EEC, was making huge growths, choosing their might within the power rankings like Mortal Kombat, to the point of threatening the US's #1 spot. The EEC was putting their new muscle to work and putting the squeeze on Uncle Sam.
You be 20 years from now.
By 1992, the euro was the new world's currency as the United States National Security Council fell. Not hard to imagine, as their evil empire ways of doing things were getting on people's nerves with their political views and outdated feud with the Soviet Union, who at this time was in desperate need of aid and pleading for help. Not only would the US refuse to help, they would bully NATO into doing the same. Europe would straight up turn into Mayhem Miller and say F that with their own bully beatdown style and help the Soviet Union with food and other aid. This new bond would cause the collapse of NATO, ending a 40-year hatred between the two powers. The US, now being very pissed about being dissed, started crashing out worse than, we know someone, following the EEC taking their belt from the reigning champ, crushed the US dollar. Between 93 and 94, the US would play their last hand by trying to sabotage the EEC's new status. One of their major efforts was hacking and manipulating the Europe and Asian stocks. Very subtle. The hack gave the struggling NSC the chance to create artificial currency to paint the image that America was wealthy beyond thriving.
Are you stupid or something?
After the EEC smelt what was cooking, they just leaked the real info to the world, resulting in the US economy system collapsing. To mushy things up even more, the America was slapped with a planet ton of embargoes that was pure overkill. The collapse threw the US into chaos, and for those who have skipped to this part, this will sum it all up.
Watch closely as Grandpa topples an empire by changing a 1 to a 0.
Mr. President, the Blemflark's value just dropped to nothing.
What do you mean?
I mean, our single centralized galactic currency just went from being worth 1 of itself to 0 of itself.
Oh, dear God, no. Calm down, people. Deploy the galactic militia and declare martial law.
Yes, sir. What should I pay them with? Their payment is the honor they'll feel to serve their... Wait, who's paying me to yell at this guy?
I can answer that. For money.
I never thought I'd live to see this day.
Gentlemen! There's a solution here you're not seeing.
This stopped the city in an instant, and the violence hit the city like a pair of juiced up gorilla arms. These citizens were doing whatever they had to in order to survive this new state of reality. People were going homeless in a Thanos snap, putting chrome to their own neural ports when their life savings evaporated right before their eyes. All manners of crime plagued the city, from citizens looting and killing one another, as the city fell into pure devastation. Within the borders of the city, all seemed lost, yet if these people aren't resilient, the city would find a way to start putting itself back together. For a few years after the initial collapse, the riots and violence and killings would dissipate. The city would start demolition around Heartland and other areas to bring the chaos-stricken metropolitan area back to its prime glory. Then, the Windy City would be hit with another devastation by 2012. Why you think I keep talking about the Kumite? This city got its ass whooped. The city had barely gotten back on its feet when a demolition crew doing work around the university would discover Heartland, sealed up with cement, covered in biohazard warnings and dust. I mean, real horror movie shit. The demolition crew would decide to say, fuck that, and knock it down. This would unexpectedly release a vicious disease that was originally thought to be a new form of Ebola, was quickly ripping through parts of the city now. These fools damn sure didn't want to take the blame, yet it was soon discovered that this new disease was all caused by none other than you think, the government and their secret biochemicals that they were creating and left abandoned at Heartland. Prime example of what happens when the government doesn't plan for their own negligence. We're not talking the damn flu or hay fever here, okay? Ebola symptoms are no laughing matter, especially if left untreated. We are talking at minimum, you get heavy flu vibes. Mid-range, we're talking constant and violent expulsion of bodily fluids, including your blood or organ failure. And then, at worst, you're dead.
We're dead! We're dead!
They released a whole lot of foolery onto the city on the scale of Kratos and Pandora's box. This event would wipe out more than 200,000 within 6 months. Most smart folks ended up relocating, I don't blame them, to other safer areas not in Chicago. Now at this point, the place was left damn near extinct. Without a city, there was no port activity. The US shipping infrastructure across the Great Lakes were done. This was the final nail in the Chicago coffin. The city being practically abandoned would start to resemble a little place we Night City locals know all too well, becoming a wasteland as 90% of its population cheesed it out of there due to the high toxin level. This effectively turned Chicago into a desolate, nomadic town, where the survivors of the bioplague who decided to stay had to bury family members and were left to die themselves. Those survivors also roamed the streets in groups, scavenging what they could. The culture of the nomads unfortunately comes from tragedy. It's like losing everything is the initiation process, and there was no future in sight. This tragedy also fuels the strong family bonds known well among the culture. The city was being reclaimed by nature, looking like an episode from The Last of Us, as buildings were rusted into decay and algae in nature was growing all over what was once family-filled homes. Chicago, for the lack of a better word, was flatlined, with no police force, no emergency services, phone lines, power, nor resources or business was happening in Chicago. The city would remain in this condition for years before StormTech set up shop. They would set up their headquarters in a new city started right across the bay of the old toxin-riddled Chicago called Chicago Port. This computing hardware megacorp, who also had their hands in cyberware, vehicles, and weapon manufacturing, was making waves and eddies. This company, unlike others, used and took a lot of much needed work from the nomads. Regardless of the reasonings behind how that came to be, it provided a much needed rivals team up between the two, giving the nomads a much needed protection from other armed megacorps and provided plenty of workers for StormTech's needs. Working with the deal that was struck between this megacorp and a few of the major 7 nations allowed them to get a lot of eddies thrown their way, pushing them into putting a huge effort into rebuilding Chicago back up. The work began when StormTech's first move in 2017 was to slowly send in groups of nomads that would start collecting salvageable and valuable resources. Through these efforts, a lot of progress was made, slowly reclaiming and building huge parts of New Chicago. The city had work, electricity, lower toxicity levels, and though 50% of the population was transient, the numbers were steadily climbing. Places like The Loop, which is New Chicago's downtown metro area, home to StormTech headquarters. Most of the efforts to rebuild the city were first put into this project. The area is where all of the pre- and post-collapse skyscrapers are displayed in all of their glory. Named The Loop due to the elevated track that runs high above the streets, and it wraps all the way around a good chunk of the downtown area. By the time 2020 rolled around, Chicago had 4 major areas thriving in their own ways. The Loop, a place called Newtown, another one called O-Town. That's where most of the nomads decided to hang out in collective droves. One of them being an underground network of streets almost the same size as the Loop that was right above. Bathed in green light, it was called Emerald City and home to the Murlocs and a bunch of filth only traversed by the desperate. A big chunk of the population being nomad groups and gangs that were looking for a new home and steady work gave the city some real colorful characters. Just go visit Old Town. The population would rise from borderline extinction to 8 million strong. Enough was happening that the new megacorp named Cytech started there. Not only did it start in Chicago, it managed to go global from there as well, specializing in cybernetic implants all the way to military-grade weapons. Unfortunately, during the Fourth Corpo War, Arasaka would set off a virus bomb in the city to prevent it from being a Militech stronghold. And you can bet your sweet augmented ass that this had a major impact on changing the trajectory in the war for Arasaka. Talk about some funny things, Arasaka gets blown up, but they've blown up other people too. And after that event, there isn't many deets known about what Chicago is experiencing or what they've gone through since that war. But there is speculation and talk around town that Chicago is either rebuilt or is being rebuilt as we speak. And this is one of my favorite parts, Chooms. This is where we get into some wild space theories, because Chicago could potentially be thriving and possibly ready to re-emerge back on the scene. This is shown with the Maglev network advertising as a fast connection between Night City and Chicago. With the city being a part of the NUSA and Night City a free state, why would Night Corp be interested in this connection? What? This would only make it easier for Militech to transport goods between the area. If Chicago was possibly seen as a stronghold for Militech, this maglev built by what I assume is an AI-ran Night Corp could be some scheming plans going on underneath. And I've mentioned in another video that the AI predicted another hot war was on the horizon. Imagine that. Imagine a world that starts off more nomadic and gives you more skill points based off of that. A city that may not be as thriving as Night City, yet who the hell knows what their advances are. And if we're talking something that may be more aligned with the NUSA, rules in how things are perceived are a lot different than it is in Night City. So a character being based out of Chicago would give us a whole new perspective on how the world is seen. Between a state that is under the NUSA's control yet may hate the NUSA, as the old government is the whole reason for a lot of the shit Chicago has experienced, versus a free state like Night City. Something like this could definitely shake up the different levels of importance in the life path options. You can make the nomad life path a bit more significant, and with Chicago doing work with the Aldecaldos and a few other nomadic groups like the Hordes, they can obviously start off in a city versus starting off in a deserted area, still keeping the corpo life path as one of the main ways to play the game, yet due to the NUSA you can add in the lawman factor, and that could be something that is, one, do you choose to stay with the NUSA or do you turn your back on them? That would be a great life path to start off with from a city that is devastated by the NUSA, and give us more information on why Night Corp is so adamant about making a connection between Chicago and itself. Now, all we can do, Chooms, is wonder what is going on in Chicago, and how in Cyberpunk 2080 is Chicago gonna be significant? Is this gonna be the new city we start in? Is this just gonna be a place that we visit as a new character hosted from Night City? Or am I just out of my mind and took a Chicago lore video way too far? Please let me know what y'all think in the comments below. I truly enjoy reading them. I love to give a huge cosmic thanks and lots of free hugs to my channel members. Thank y'all so much for the continued support, and as well thank all of you who ended up clicking this video. If you had a great time, then consider hitting that thumbs up button, and if you were thoroughly entertained, I would say consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any of the videos I drop, especially if you're a Cyberpunk fan. Appreciate each and every one of y'all who have been rocking with me. Y'all know where to get these free hugs. Sending y'all lots of love. Make sure you stay safe out there and take care of yourselves. And as always, Chooms, hey, I'll see you in Night City. Let's go ahead and end transmission, because your big bro Space is out. Peace.